Welcome to Prestige Worldwide, the podcast, a weekly battle of wits, debating everything from horseshoes to hand grenades, all for the privilege to be called right. And now, your hosts, Bobo and Travis.
Hey guys, welcome to Prestige Worldwide, the podcast. I'm Travis. With me always is Bobo.
Heyo.
How's it going, buddy?
Living the fucking dream. Back in the walkout basement in white trash America.
Yeah, you can tell Bobo's here, and it's kind of nice having you here, buddy.
You know, every time I come back to record a podcast in person, I'm like, I should do this more.
We should do it more, but it's a hike for you to get here. So
it's a hike. Yeah. We'll talk about it.
That's fine.
I do think that they come off a little better in person.
You know what? I'm going to say this right now. I think you have more. You're more animated when you're here than when we record.
I've always felt, and we're not going to talk about this very long because we have a lot of things to get to this week.
Right.
I've always felt we should have an audience to record the podcast with because I'd be more animated with an audience. And you as an audience of one is still better than me at home with an audience of zero.
Because I always thought, and again, yeah, you're right. We were not going to go, but I always thought whenever you start off the podcast, it's always funny to me because when you start off the podcast, it's like monotone. And like you are just welcome to Prestige Worldwide, the podcast. Like I'm like, dude, come on. At least pretend to be excited.
I'm trying to settle in, motherfucker.
I'm setting the mood.
Set the mood.
A shitty mood.
All right, listen. Moving on. We got a lot of shit to get to this week.
Yes.
We have a very special. What's going to be a 2-part episode because the interview went so fucking long.
Right.
But we talked with Dennis Jaggard, who is the lead singer, guitar player, and the songwriter, basically the one-man band of 10 Foot Pole.
Right.
And it's a fucking fantastic interview. We can't wait for you guys to listen to it. So we're going to get through some house cleaning first, and then we're going to get right to the interview.
Let's do that. So we have a voicemail to play.
Okay.
And I'm going to play that.
Hey, this is a family fun time with the obligatory first place call for the week. It doesn't really matter because I'm still in 8th place. But yay for the win.
He has just as much energy as you do, motherfucker.
What happened to enthusiasm, fun time?
Yeah.
Enthusiasm.
I like how you're so excited for your win that you can barely muster up the energy to leave a voicemail.
The best fucking part of that podcast, or that fucking voicemail, is that all week, Family Fun Times and blowing up my fucking phone saying, like this week, he was like in the depths, like, I don't know how to play Movie League anymore. I can't figure out how to get a fucking win. I can't buy a win. I just don't understand it anymore. And then he fucking comes in first place. So fuck you.
Yeah, and if you really want to figure out how not to play this, you just look at my lineups.
You fucking sucked this week.
So, all right, so let's go through this. Family Fun Time, you won. Thanks for the voicemail. I do appreciate the voicemail. I'll next time maybe just a little bit more excitement,
a little bit more,
but just whatever. Frank came in second. Andres, whoever the hell you are, came in third.
Who the fuck is that dude?
Big Red came in fourth. Derp came in fifth. Tim came in sixth. You, Bobo, came in seventh. Andy came in eighth, and I came in ninth. And Andy and I had the same exact thought process with this. And I'm sure that if he were here to say this, he would say the exact same thing. The Christians have screwed us once again. Because I placed my bet on an Easter weekend where zombie Jesus comes back to life and on a Christian movie that looks absolutely terrible, but those people have no taste at all, considering their book is boring. But
you guys fucked up, though. Because you know what happened. You bet on them going to see a Christian movie on Easter weekend.
Yes.
Here's the problem, Travis. They gave all their money to fucking the church because of Notre Dame.
They do that on Saturday.
They gave more money to rebuild the church already. They don't have money to go to the movies. You fucked up.
Isn't that some bullshit,
yes.
Though? Like that like they raised what, like $1 billion to rebuild a church?
Here's the thing.
When the Catholic Church has that amount of money.
Here's the other problem is France owns that building, not the Catholic Church. You're not giving money to the goddamn, you're giving money to the French government, basically.
Okay. Well, no, actually, that makes me feel better.
No, it doesn't. Who cares? Let it fall down. There's people starving to death. Can we solve that problem first? Listen, you guys had all this money in your fucking pockets. Oh, you know what? I'm saving it for a rainy day. That rainy day is a fucking building in France that fell down and you don't even care about until you heard about it in the news. But there's people starving. You couldn't give money to them? Fuck you.
Yeah, well,
That's the whole problem with fucking religion in a nutshell.
But here's the thing: people will always starve, and when they're done rebuilding the church, it'll be done, so you can have a finished product and have a sense of accomplishment. So I understand.
This is bullshit. All right, moving on. So
moving on. But anyways, yeah, we are going to move. You want to do the overall?
No.
Why? Because you are
Fifth, sixth. I fell.
Oh God, you're in sixth.
I fell hard this week. I fucking took a bath, buddy.
Overall, Big Red is still in the lead.
Fuck you.
Derp to Derp is in second.
I hate him too.
Andrice.
He's a dickhead. I know who he is.
He's in third. Andy's in fourth.
What?
How the fuck is that?
I fucking hate him too. He's a shithead.
That's because he's got 2 wins, which is two more than
how many balls he has.
2 more than you and I have combined. Anyways, Frank is in fifth.
Frank the Tank. What an idiot.
Bobo, you're in sixth.
Yeah, I rule.
Tim's in seventh.
Tim's a dickhead.
Family Fun Time still in eighth, as he said on his voicemail, and I am perpetually in last because I can never catch up.
I'm still mad at Tim for that voicemail the other week by this fucking Disney onesie party.
By the way, we got a message from Tim. Not a voicemail message. We got a message from Tim. He didn't remember leaving that voicemail. And when he heard it on the podcast, he still didn't remember. So,
all right, now I like Tim a little more. Tim, you totally redeemed yourself with that message.
I'm very proud of him. And next week or maybe the week after, I have stories.
I also think I know who MC or Andrice is. It's MC.
You think it's MC? Huh?
Yeah. I'm calling you out, MC. If it's not you, I'll be fucking surprised.
Why do you think it's MC?
I just do.
Okay.
I have my reasons.
All right.
I've done the research. I'm not going to display the whole portfolio at this point because we don't have time. I think it's MC. I'm calling you out, motherfucker. I know it's you. Come out of hiding. What are you afraid of besides losing to Bobo every week?
He's not. He's beating you in overall
he can
status.
Suck my dick from the back. Anyways, so this week,
I believe you're lower on the totem pole, so you'd be the one sucking the dick.
Putting it hard stop. Moving on. This week,
cocksucker,
and next week. So we interviewed Dennis Jaggard, who is from the band 10 Foot Pole.
Yes.
You guys probably don't know who 10 Foot Pole is.
You will,
and that's okay if you don't, because they're not what you would call a super successful, multi-platinum recording artist. They are a DIY skate punk band that has been touring and being the working man's punk rock band for the better part of 30 years now.
Right.
And we wanted to he's a very interesting guy. He's got a lot of stories. He's got a very interesting day job. He runs into a lot of very famous people. He has some great stories from that. And they have a new album coming out. And I wanted to support him and give him a little bit of press for his new record. But also I wanted to talk to him because I think he's a very genuine, interesting guy. And we need more people like him in the world.
Right.
And I want to get his message and his voice out a little bit because I think people are going to want to hear what he has to say in such a positive and unique manner.
I agree. I did not. I know of 10 Foot Pole, but I'm not a fan like you are. For whatever no reason. Like it's not like their music's bad or anything. It's just not on my radar. But I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to Dennis, and he was very kind to give us 2 hours of his time.
I mean, really, just 2 hours of his time. Just took it out, and we were going to do it as one episode, but 2 hours we know it's just way too long. So we're going to cut it up.
Yeah.
So we're going to play the first half of the interview this week. And next week, we're going to do a short introduction again. So if you have any voicemails or comments or whatever, feel free to, let us know, 747 banging.
Right.
Or put them on the Facebook or the Instagram, Twitter, PW the podcast. And we can play those next week in the beginning of the episode. Then we'll conclude the interview next week.
Right.
That's the plan.
I think that's about it.
So without further ado, here is our interview with Dennis Jaggard from the band 10 Foot Pole. So joining us today on Prestige Worldwide, the podcast, we have a very special guest and a very special episode. Everyone at home, you might not know him. I know him and his music very well. Travis is going to get to know him through the next hour. Dennis Jaggard from 10 Foot Pole is with us. Hello, Dennis. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
Glad to have you. Now, do you want to explain to our listeners aren't necessarily music enthusiasts or punk rock aficionados, so do you want to explain who 10 Foot Pole is as a band rather than me try to butcher my way through what you guys have done with your career?
Yeah, sure. I guess I could summarize it as in the 80s, we were kids trying to be kind of a rock band, but we weren't good enough to play like complex music, so we played really simple stuff from the heart. They called it melodic hardcore back then. Then in the 90s, we became kind of we were doing the same thing, but it kind of shifted to what we considered skate punk or melodic punk. And it's similar. It was similar to bands like Bad Religion, NoFX, Pennywise, Green Day, Blink-182, and over the years it's evolved a little bit more too. Where now I think we have a new record coming out, and it's a bit more poppy. So the overview is that we're basically an underground band who's played thousands of shows around the world, but without any radio hits. We've never had that level of success, but we have a fairly strong underground following of just random people around the world who like us.
That's a good way to sum it up.
I mean, you guys have kind of had a hit. You guys were on the Tony Hawk Pro Skater soundtrack, weren't you?
I think so. I mean, I guess when I say hit, I mean like a radio hit.
Right. Yeah.
For example, I often do sound for the band Jimmy Eat World, and they have a song called The Middle, and sold millions of records. But even with bands on our label, like The Offspring had a hit, and they ended up selling 7 million records, and Rancid had a radio hit, and so I guess I just was explaining that we're not at that level where
right.
where we sold millions of records. We've sold hundreds of thousands of records, which is really good for only playing in what I consider kind of underground, like clubs and small places around the world.
Oh yeah. Do you still play? The Racer X is the song from Tony Hawk. Do you guys still incorporate that into your live show?
Oh, really? Racer X is on there? I guess I should incorporate that. we have on and off over the years. We have. It's not my favorite song, but it is a fun one. It's just kind of a goofy one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do want to ask what your favorite songs are, but we'll get into that. I just want to give the listeners a little bit of. So you're probably wondering right now, why is Dennis Jaggard from 10 Foot Pole on our podcast? And the answer is, you fuckers have to deal with it because Bobo's a big fan. And sometimes...
Are you allowed to say the F word on this?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We say whatever we want. That's
wow.
That's why it's Bobo.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, the listeners have to deal with me this week because I wanted to do this, and so we're going to fucking do it. That's just how it works sometimes when you have your own podcast, right, Travis?
Hey, listen, no complaints from me. I like it. So...
I've been a fan. I mean, I probably picked up, I think it was Punk-O-Rama Volume 3? Whatever song The Getaway was on was the first track of one of the Epitaph samplers from Punk-O-Rama back in the day. And this is back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And that's where I found out about 10 Foot Pole. And I listened to that first song, and I was like, well, this band's fucking rad. So you start getting the back catalog and listening, and I've been following you guys ever since. So nice. 10 Foot Pole is probably what I would consider what you say a guilty pleasure in terms of the punk rock world. Because, again, as you just explained, you're not The Offspring, you're not Jimmy Eat World, but I would put 10 Foot Pole right up there with like NoFX and Livewagon in terms of my favorite bands of all time. So.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you.
So I probably know more about you than you realize.
Music is subjective, so it's really hard to say like what people are gonna embrace and so. You know, for years and years, I've just kept writing songs and hoping I would write some that people would like. And I think with the new record, I might have tapped into a couple of possibilities there where people might embrace it more than in the past. But it's hard to say. You know, we just do our best and hope people like it.
I'm kind of curious is because of the longevity of the band, like how, we're talking over 20 years, was almost over 30 years? Is that kind of...
We started in 1983.
Yeah. So it's been a little while.
I mean, it wasn't called 10 Foot Pole back then.
Right.
It was called different things. Eventually, it was called Scared Straight for a while. Our first national tour was Scared Straight in 1985. We went on tour with Ill Repute. And actually, it's interesting that you're from Pennsylvania because our tour ended after our car and trailer got stolen in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Oh, my God.
After a show at... with Half-Life at the Electric Banana. Did I say that right? I think it was the Electric Banana.
I don't think that's a venue anymore, but I know the name. Because I went to school in Pittsburgh, so I'm familiar with that.
So wait, they stole the van and the trailer?
Well, it was actually a station wagon and a trailer, and we got that back, but it was empty when we got it back. So it was a bit of a shock for us. We went ahead and played one more show on borrowed equipment in Baltimore which I absolutely loved. I was on a PV amp that had no distortion, so it kind of sounded like jazz, but it was also kind of like Minor Threat, like it was really raw. And I was ready to just keep going. I had my dad's credit card, and I was ready to buy a new guitar and a new distortion pedal. And just when we had talked the guys into doing it, Brian Walsby, our drummer at the time, got this offer to be a merch person for Corrosion of Conformity, and that was his dream band, and that was the end of the tour. He was like, guys, I'm sorry to do this, but I just love Corrosion of Conformity, and this offer will never happen again, so I'm going to just go right from here to North Carolina and be their road person.
I've got to ask, did your dad know you had his credit card?
Yeah, I'm sure he did. It was in case of emergency,
right?
And it was my opinion that was an emergency. I should mention that I was a very responsible kid. I missed the beginning of the tour because I was doing stages and sound for a 4th of July show in at Devonshire Downs in California for about 12,000 people. Like, I was the sound engineer and also set up the stages and so I think I was 16, like I could just barely drive in 1985, and but I was a very responsible kid, like, doing, I could work and earn the money back if I needed to.
Right. Okay.
And, so, I was a straight A student, and I don't know if that time whether I was already signed up to, but I ended up going to UC Berkeley and doing, I did really well in school. Not that it necessarily helped me in my, my other.
None of this is punk rock at all.
I seem to be on this trajectory that people thought I was going to be successful. They just didn't know I was going to spend 35 years trying to write a good song.
So when back to the tour story, you guys were based out of California at that time, right?
Yeah, Simi Valley, California, just north of Los Angeles.
So Brian was just like, "Peace, guys. You guys have fun getting back to California from Baltimore."
That was the one time that I felt the most violent towards a band member because we had just talked with Brian and we had all had our plan that's what we were going to do. And I can't remember who else we were trying to convince, but we convinced someone else to do it. And then when we went back to Brian, he canceled. And so I was just, cause we were all the way across the country and we had these shows lined up like CBGB's in New York and,
Jesus.
Yeah.
And I didn't want the adventure to end, so I was really upset. But yeah, Brian just moved. He moved from Simi Valley, California, to Raleigh, North Carolina, and that was it. And so Brian is an artist. I don't know if you know who he is, but he did the cover of. He did a bunch of different things, like the cover of 7 Seconds, Walk Together, Rock Together, the cover of the Nardcore album, which when we were touring, that was kind of on Epitaph Records. There was a Scared Straight EP and
okay.
On set list for us, just to kind of relive that moment. He did the back cover for us. He did
okay. So I'm familiar with the set list. I have that. So okay, that's pretty cool. So I guess after all these years, time heals all wounds. Then is what you're saying.
Oh no! I loved Brian. I wasn't mad at him for more than a few minutes. But for a few minutes, I was really mad. But yeah, no, I didn't have any kind of long-term resentment. Yeah, no, I loved that guy. He's great, and I didn't see him for years.
Well, yeah,
we reconnected, and I mean, all was well. Like 10 minutes later, just for a few minutes, I was just like. Luckily I didn't already buy the guitar, because we were close. Like I was like, okay, let's go to a guitar, because we didn't have time to sit and talk about it. It was like, we've got to make the call and then drive to New York and play a show, or we have to call them and say we're canceling the whole tour.
Right. So you have hours to make a decision, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And he's like, "Peace, fuckers.
I gotta go sell merch. I gotta go sling shirts for a living."
Yeah,
that's awesome. But what has kept you going for all of these years and all throughout?
Yeah, because you could have just gone home from that tour and called it a career. But I had one good tour. Let's go to UC Berkeley. We'll get a real job. We'll put on a suit and tie, and that's it, right?
Well, that's the thing. Is it? I find I get bored pretty easily in life, and so I've always tried to pursue things that were exciting. In high school, I did wrestling. In college, I learned how to ride motorcycles and so I like to switch things up. So I'd be in the band. I'd do, I started doing sound for concerts and things, and that's always exciting because there's always that thrill of knowing that you could mess up the whole show. And, yeah, I mean, I get really worried about when I'm working. I get really worried. So, well, we should mention I was the sound engineer for Prince in 2006 and 2007. So, when I say I do sound for concerts, we're talking like some major concerts.
And you were front of house. You were the main engineer, right?
I was the engineer mixing what the audience hears. Yeah, called front of house.
Yeah,
and yeah, actually for Prince, I did both. I did the monitors from front of house, which is typically with an artist like that, that's a 2-person job or possibly more. But Prince wanted me to be the one responsible.
Was he just cheap, or did he really trust you?
One, he trusted me, and 2, he wanted to have one person that he could be mad at if he wasn't happy.
Oh, okay.
And that he wanted to have accountability because typically, especially in his case, he uses wedge monitors. And typically, if there's feedback, the monitor guy blames the front of house guy, and the front of house guy blames the monitor guy.
Right.
Or person. I shouldn't say guy. That's so sexist of me. I can't believe I just did that. But that's, the typical thing is you point fingers and say, well, it's not me, it's monitors. And because it always is. But no.
Well played, sir.
But he wanted to have one person do it. And so when I was mixing Prince, I mixed the monitors almost like it was a separate thing, but he wanted to hear my mix in the monitors. So I gave him stereo house mix, but I set the vocals to be as steady and as loud as I could get them, but everything other than the vocals was literally the same mix I gave the house. It just was EQ'd differently to sound nice in his wedges, and I also did it in his side fills. So that was a little bit dangerous because the effects and things could go into feedback. Like if he was singing really quiet and I kept turning him up and up and up, there'd be more of a likelihood of feedback.
Yeah.
And that's why I quit. I eventually quit because I didn't want him to be disappointed in me. I didn't want to ruin shows. And the show got more and more complex. And so I felt like I told him that I'd rather have him be mad at me for quitting than mad at me for wrecking a big show.
That's an interesting way of looking at it.
Did he ever have a rock star moment where he blew up or anything during that tour, or was he pretty even keel?
Well, we had a lot of different experiences. Yeah, I wouldn't say he ever blew up. He didn't blow up at me. I saw things go down. For example, he often had when I first started, he had a protege named Tamar. I think her real name's Ashley, but in fact, I'm doing sound for her this week. So I still do sound for Prince's band. The New Power Generation is playing in Minneapolis. I think it's this Friday. And I'm going out there and doing sound for them. And that's because it's actually Prince's band, but they just do a tribute to Prince with his actual band. And Tamar's actually going to be there. But I guess my point there was that at the end of Tamar's association with Prince, there was a time when she wouldn't give him his guitar. She was running around the stage and she had his guitar, and she was kind of like giggling and being silly. And she said later, like, I just wanted to show him that I'm still his girl. And but the keyboardist at the time told me that was not good. Like that's she's never going to recover from that. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was kind of like, we all just were like, oh no, like, so it wasn't that he got mad.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, he did get mad, but he didn't say anything, but it was just over. Like their relationship was done. So
very quickly she was not his girl.
Yeah. And I'm not gloating about that or saying that. I'm just saying, when you asked about him getting mad, like I never saw him like raise his voice or anything to anyone. It was more like he would just quietly say, Denny, can you ask that guitar tech to just leave the building right now?
Yeah.
He was always calm and cool about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
Yeah, the worst thing he ever said was from the stage. He said, "Denny, turn me up," and I'm not playing. And then he sent out the security guard and the hairdresser and the DJ all to come back to tell me, said, Prince said you got to turn him up and he's not playing. And I said, I know, I turned him up, but this is as much as I can do or it's going to start feeding back. So those were the kinds of things where running monitors from front of house could be dangerous.
Right. Okay. Well, he did threaten to give you that nickname though, right?
Oh, the Denny feedback. Yeah. The Denny feedback story was they were rehearsing in Los Angeles in a ballroom in a house where it basically was a room with wood floors and mirrors on the walls and like kind of funny shapes on the ceiling that threw the sound back into the microphones. So I should mention for people who aren't into sound or bands, in the old days, bands used monitors that were speakers, and the speakers, if they got loud enough, would feed into the mics and create a loop where the mic basically heard the speaker and made it louder and louder and louder until it created a ringing that we call feedback. Most modern bands use in-ear monitors, which kind of eliminates that whole possibility because the microphone can't hear that sound coming back into it because it's going right to the artist's ears.
Right.
So in Prince's house, he had all wedges, and it was very easy to make feedback because everybody's wedges fed into all the mics because of all the hard surfaces around. So when they say, turn me up, and then you turn them up, and then it starts ringing, and then they blame you for making it feedback. But one time Prince said to me, this was before he knew that I was in a punk band. He goes, it was starting to ring a little bit, like, you know, while they were singing, you could kind of hear this like kind of kind of sound. And he just stops and he goes, Denny, if I hear any feedback, I'm going to give you a nickname and you're never going to work in this business again. I'm going to call you Denny Feedback.
Which is just,
and of course I was like, okay, I'm right on it. You know, can I have a couple minutes? Let me work on this. Let me do it. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking that would be so cool.
Right. Like you'd be the guy that got a nickname by Prince. Like that, you'd be punk rock royalty.
Yeah. And plus the thing about never working in the industry, the reality is if Prince gives you a nickname and people know that he gave it to you, no one's going to say, yeah, you shouldn't hire that guy because Prince gave him a nickname. They're going to say, oh, that guy worked with Prince for 1.5 years and didn't get fired. We had to hire him.
Exactly.
Regardless of his
He goes
nickname.
to the top of the fucking list.
Plus, I don't know how tall you are, Dennis, but I'm assuming you're taller than Prince. So he's not that imposing of a figure when he's threatening your career.
Well, but it's not a physical thing. I mean,
Right.
he did have these beautiful eyes that he actually was kind of intimidating. Though, like if you looked at him, it was kind of like his eyes were like looking at the galaxy, and you kind of had to look away, just because he was so like usually you'd just be like, oh yeah, it's Prince, you know, that's my boss, I work with him, whatever. But once in a while, like if you locked eyes with him, it was kind of like, oh wow, that's Prince.
You
like,
can see into your soul. You see all of
I
eternity.
don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's just something that's like all of a sudden you kind of get chills and go like, oh wow, I can't believe I'm talking to this guy.
Well, I think people, have always said Prince had that kind of like that silent intensity about him in his eyes. That was, I mean, that's pretty. I've heard other people say similar things about that in interviews about talking to Prince. That he just has that intensity and that focus and that look in his eyes when you look at him. Like you can kind of like see back into your soul.
Yeah, and he's also unpredictable. Like you never know. You know, you can't get too comfortable because he's fired so many people at like, you know, just on a whim that, you know, you're always in concerned about your career. And also he puts you in a lot of awkward positions. Like, he would ask you to do something that was way out of your realm. Like, you know, he'd say like, oh, you know, go get the lyrics to this song, whatever, this Foo Fighters song, you know, go get the lyrics and bring them to me. You know, and so, you know, I'm at his house, like, okay, where am I going to get a printer, you know? But you just
handwrite
them
them out.
happen because you don't want to look incompetent.
Right.
And so all of a sudden you're doing all these different jobs. Like there was one time during rehearsals that I was like running up and turning on the video machine and like running the soundboard. And when a song changed, I'd have to change the effects and things for the songs. But then I also had to run up and turn the lyric sheets. And I couldn't turn the lyric sheet early because then it would be me telling him what song to play next. So I had to wait till he hit the first note. But that also was the time when I had to be changing the effects because he was videotaping it, and later he was and I was also recording it, and later he was gonna listen to it and be super critical. He'd be like, Denny, why didn't the reverb change till halfway through the first verse? And I'd say, because I ran to the stage and changed the lyric sheet.
Yeah, right. Because you can't remember your fucking
say
songs.
Things like, I don't want to hear any more excuses.
Jesus, that sounds stressful. Like
one of my favorite lines that he used, I got really excited after one of our first shows together, and he asked me something, and I was kind of like, explaining my point of view, and he just kind of looked at me and cocked his head kind of sideways like a dog when they're going like questioning what you're saying, and he just looked at me and he goes, "Is this a debate?"
Wow, all right.
And I just said, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I was just so excited. It sounded so good. It was such a great show." And that was it.
So did you ever let him listen to 10 Foot Pole? Did he ever listen to your band?
I don't know if he ever listened. He did rib me about it once in a while. Like when he found out that I was in a punk band, he said, just remember, Denny, this is funk, not punk. Or like sometimes he didn't think I put enough bass guitar in the mix, and he'd be like, come on, Denny, this is funk, not punk. Why do you hate the bass? Is it because you're in a punk band? He would give me that kind of.
Okay.
Which, I should say, like, after all the stories and stuff, like, I really miss him, and I always thought that I would get a chance to work with him again. For years, I carried around this huge list of 100 songs with notes about every song, because it was not unthinkable that I would just get a call from out of the blue to just come in and do a show. In fact, I did get one call, and it was the night of the Academy Awards, and I got a call to mix him like years after, and I couldn't go because I was actually working at the Academy Awards Governor's Ball, and the security badges that we got to be able to get in and work that show had been done months in advance, like really high security. And so even though Prince's show was after my show, I couldn't even walk away and get someone else to sub for me on the strike because security was too tight to let anyone else in the building. So I actually had to turn down a Prince gig that could have led to me like going right back and working for him, like we had never separated.
Yeah, that's kind of the industry. You get one call from one artist, next thing you know, you're on tour with them for 2 years.
Yeah, and that's interesting that it happens that way, but it also can be could be devastating for me when I know that any show that I book for 10 Foot Pole could block those kinds of experiences. So for Prince, when I first started working with him, I had a 10 Foot Pole little tour booked in Japan, and I told them right at the start, like, I'm completely available. I'm your man, except for I've got this one little thing in Japan with my band, and I can't cancel it. And sure enough, like a couple days before we left to go to Japan, I got a call from his I don't know what you call
representative,
kind of like a tour, kind of like a tour manager. I mean, Prince didn't have like managers because he was the boss. He didn't have managers, but he had like people like security guards and tour managers and people who would kind of handle things for him. But anyway, I got a call, and she goes, Denny, is there any way that you can stay home and do these shows? Because Prince just booked these shows, and he said he really wants you to be there, and he's going to be really disappointed if you're not there. And it's like, oh my God, like Prince wants me, but I have shows booked with my band in Japan. Like, I can't cancel that.
Yeah.
They bought airplane tickets. They're expecting us to be there. Like, I can't just cancel. And so I did the 10 Foot Pole shows. I said, no, I committed to this. I've got to do it. And that could have easily be the end of working with Prince. Luckily for me, he had an old sound engineer come back, and for whatever reason, he didn't, kind of re-fall in love with the old guy. And so I still had my gig after when I came home, but it could have just as easily gone the other way. It could have just as easily been that was it. And I would have lost from that point on. I worked more than a year for him. So, I was really lucky that I didn't lose that gig. And, cause that gig, the Prince gig, actually led to working with, AFI and Ryan Adams and Jimmy Eat World and Beck, because, a production manager that worked with me with Prince was impressed with how I worked and called me to work, and I did monitors for AFI for a year and a half on the Crash Love tour.
Oh wow!
And then that led me to Beck, and then led me to Jimmy Eat World. So if I would have, if I would have been busy the first time, like on any of that stuff, it could have easily just gone the other way, like hundreds of jobs lost, maybe thousands.
Yeah.
And I did lose a Alice in Chains gig, a tour, because of 10-foot pole, and that's a whole other story. I won't get into it, but I guess the point is, a lot of times people get irritated that we don't tour enough or that we don't do shows, and even one show could block like hundreds, maybe thousands of jobs for me.
Yeah, and
so
I mean,
I have to be really careful.
And that really is your day job. I mean, you're still touring with these huge bands, but at the end of the day, I'm guessing sound engineering is your day job.
It is, except this year, I'm so proud of Escalating Quickly that I committed to do summer touring. And in fact, I just committed to do a Europe tour in November, and I can't announce it, but I think it's going to go through. And what that basically means is I'm blocked from all audio, like all major audio tours for pretty much the whole year. So I'm totally committed to 10-foot pole right now, and just like knocking on wood that it doesn't bankrupt me and make me homeless. Luckily, there's a guy in Quebec that has promised that if I do lose my house, I can move up into his chateau, which is what they call their little cabins in the woods. But right now it still has 20 feet of snow on it. So if we do move up there, I'm going to need a big shovel.
I also have a lovely attic in my house in Pennsylvania, Dennis, that your family's welcome to stay at.
Oh, thank you. I have 2 kids and a wife and 2 dogs.
What kind of dogs are they?
I have a nice, I live in Boise, Idaho, so living is pretty cheap. But I bought a tour van. There was a point when I thought I had a whole year worth of work lined up, and it evaporated, because in this industry that kind of happens too. And so after a huge Jimmy Eat World tour, and then a big Weird Al tour, and a big auto show season last year, I was a little bit overconfident, and I bought a van and did 3 months of touring, thinking that I had all winter work lined up. And then while I was on tour, that all evaporated.
Oh.
So that's why I'm talking about losing the house is it's hard to say, like, it's hard to predict what'll happen in the future, but hopefully let's play one of our songs, because then people can have an idea about whether
you're right. I said we were going to do that. We kind of got a little off track.
Whether there's a chance that we could make a sustainable business out of this.
Okay, so
called music.
And let me set up the song first. So I want to play. Is it okay if we play "Don't Be a Dick"? Is that cool with you?
Whatever you like.
That's the one I like best out of the 3 on the Patreon that I've heard. So,
I should set it up with a little bit. One of the questions you mentioned you might ask was, what do I hope that people get out of the band 10-foot pole?
Yes.
And "Don't Be a Dick" pretty much summarizes it. It's basically a song about the golden rule. It's kind of the summary of several different religions. It's a crude way of putting it, but at the end of the day, the basic idea is that if you're nice, things are going to work out better for everyone, for yourself too. And I kind of wrote it for myself too, to remind myself not to be a dick, because I have dickish tendencies, and we probably all do to a certain extent.
We all do.
Some more than others. Bobo.
Shut up, Travis.
And the minute I wrote this song, I knew it was special, because I wanted to share it with everybody. I could barely contain myself. I wanted to call my friends and be like, "Hey, Steve, I was just thinking about you, and I wrote a song. You're going to love it. It's called Don't Be a Dick."
And they're like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
It was, yeah. And the backup vocals on this are so fun to sing. And so I should also mention, I wrote this song while on tour with bands like Jimmy Eat World and Weird Al Yankovic. And so I was playing acoustic guitar to audiences, especially with Jimmy Eat World. I was outside on sidewalks just playing guitar and singing these songs. And so Escalating Quickly really developed with a filtering process of kind of trial by humiliation. Like, if I was on a sidewalk and people really hated it, and I wasn't proud to sing, I would just throw that song away and start over again. And Don't Be a Dick was one that just people loved and would sing along. Even people who didn't know me or know anything about the band, once I started singing that chorus and asking them to sing along, it just was so fun. And so I knew that it was something special. So I hope the recording captured that, but I felt like it really captured a silliness in the band and fun, but also like the underlying thing of just being a nice person, that the world could use a little more kind of consideration for others, and that it'll be good for all of us in the long run if we
Okay, great. So let's
show a little kindness.
Let's play the song. Let's let the listeners hear 10 Foot Pole's latest song. You want to call it a single? Is it the single in your opinion?
I don't know. I mean, there's 2 songs that are out right now, and it's one of them. So maybe it's a what would you call that? Half of a double?
Half of the double. That's right.
Side B.
Maybe it's
Side B.
I mean, if someone's on radio, I think single's kind of a radio term, but
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess it just means you can buy it on its own. So I guess it's a single. In the old days, we had 45s, and the single was supposed to be the hit song that you would push to radio. I think this could be like that. I'm not a good judge of what people will like or not, but I'm super proud of it and hope that you do like it.
I'm a great judge of it. That's why I have you on the show. That's why we're playing this song. So here is "Don't Be a Dick" by 10 Foot Pole off their latest album, Escalating Quickly.
Don't be a dick. 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 As a kid, I liked the Beatles, and then Six and Yellow. Roller skated backwards to disco. Ass kicked 'cause my school book said Devo. I learned to cross town rivals when a car of massive jocks. Asked what school I attended, and then pelted me with rocks. I poured sugar in their gas tank. The proud Mustang got so sick. That day we learned the lesson. Don't be a dick. 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 Studied history and religion in the schools where I was punched. My funny hair deeply offended. A delinquent bought me for my lunch. And all the books and Bibles, social theory and explanations can be summed up in a minute. Aggression triggers escalation. No one likes to be assaulted, getting poked with a burning stick, unless you got permission. Don't be a dick. Don't be a dick. Don't be a dick. Don't be a dick. You can call it a special golden rule or common consideration. You can call it manners or etiquette or make a scientific explanation. But it all boils down to kindness, or at least not being a meanie. And if you don't understand that, you might be a giant weenie. Don't be a dick. 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 From the alleys of Barcelona to the New York City gutters, from the Tokyo elevators to London bikes ridden by nutters, I rock with millions of diverse people, big to small and fancy to plain, on their skin and clothes and hardware, more or less we're all the same. Please forgive me for this lecture, but 50 years taught me this trick. If you wanna make life better, don't be a dick. 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 Don't be a dick.
All right. Well, that's the song. I fucking love it. I've probably listened to it on the Patreon. I don't know how many plays it is on SoundCloud that you can see, because I know you stream it through SoundCloud through the Patreon. Half of them are probably me.
Uh-huh.
So I hate to tell you, you think you're like super popular. Oh, this song's got like 10,000 plays, but 5,000 are Bobo. Sorry, buddy.
Well, since you mentioned Patreon, we should mention what it is that So I paid for the record myself and trying to pay it forward in hopes that eventually we could crowdfund it to get support for it, or possibly sell enough to recover that. But the basic idea with Patreon is that if people like the band and want us to keep making music, they can kind of contribute on a monthly subscription basis. And there's different tiers depending, how dedicated you are. And there's also different benefits based on the tiers. But for basically $1 a month, you get to hear songs early and also get like podcasts and other stuff like that. So I just wanted to mention that.
Right. And so the Patreon, what is the Patreon link so people know what it is? We'll post it on the website also.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to give out the Patreon link, but we're also going to put it on PW the podcast. So,
cool.
We'll have
the
a link
basic
to it.
idea is 10footpole.com has all the links, and 10footpole.com, it doesn't look amazing right now. It's run by my kid. We're a family business, DIY, but it does have all the links. So if you go to 10footpole.com, you can see where to pre-order the record, which also has being able to stream a couple songs. But it has things like Patreon where you could find out more about it. One cool thing, which you guys haven't seen yet, is that the artwork of the new record has all the pictures of what we call the super patrons, the kind of the highest tier. And so there's just a whole string of all these different photos.
Wait, so I'm in the record?
I hope people are excited about it.
So wait, I'm in the record?
Well, I hope you can send it to that because it's already gone off to the manufacturers.
No, I've been a super patron since the first day you've had it, so I'm sure I'm in it. Like I said, you didn't know that I'm a fan, so I'm sure my picture's in it because I've sent it. I mean, I remember you told us to post it. We did it months ago, so.
I can't promise that there won't be glitches. So, anytime you do something like this, it's not like I'm Tim Apple with the, being able to delegate all the millions of different tasks to different people. It's literally just me handling Patreon and all the social media and whatnot. And so there is a chance that things like that could slip through the cracks. But as far as I know, I've got photos of people and everyone who wanted their photo is in both the vinyl and the CD artwork inside, like basically in the liner notes, like where the lyrics are and everything. Not huge pictures, but there's a list of name and a list of pictures. We didn't attach the names to the pictures just in case people wanted to stay anonymous, but there's both, so it's pretty fun.
Well, I can't wait to. Now I have to make sure I check out the vinyl first to see how devastatingly handsome I am in your record. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, and we should mention that the album comes out May 10th, correct?
May 10th. Yeah, it's on Thousand Islands Records, and you can see all that information at 10footpole.com. And 10footpole is TEN. TEN footpole.
Yeah, so make sure you go out and pre-order the album. That way you have it right on May 10th.
Already on it, buddy.
All right. Can't wait to see your picture.
I'm so excited.
I hope it's there now that we said all this.
Not me.
You guys have to buy the record just to see if Bobo's picture is in there.
Listen, if it's not, you're getting a sternly worded letter.
No, I'm going to be so happy if for some reason your picture slipped through and you didn't get in there.
You'll make one person incredibly happy if you messed up.
But let's get back to I want to get back to talking about touring because you mentioned you have a wife and you've got kids and you got dogs and I can't remember if you said cats, but
Travis is a cat person, unfortunately.
Yeah, but how do you navigate those waters with being away from home so much throughout the year?
It's really tricky and I think in life, like, you don't really ever know, like, until something bad happens, you can't like point to yourself and go, see, I'm so great at doing this, because you don't know. It's kind of like, what kind of tragic failures could occur. But, I try to do my best as a dad, trying to give the kids a lot of support and being close to them as much as I can when I'm home and being available to them when I'm gone. And the same with my wife. And it's just so difficult because, it's hard. Like, I just got home from New York the other day, working for an auto show, and just the whole trip home, my wife has all these things to talk to me and tell me about. And it's hard to go from living alone in a hotel room, working a job, to, having someone talking to you, directly for a couple of hours. So those transitions can be tough, but when I'm home, I'm really home generally. Like I'm here all the time. And so I'd like to think that kind of makes up for, because I know a lot of people work 100 hours a week and they're home, but they're not really home because they're at the office
Right.
from dusk to dawn. Or dawn to dusk. Yeah,
That's true. So whenever you're not working, you're actually home. You're actually like literally there all the time. And your wife, after a day, is like, "You need to fucking go get another job. Go on tour, do something."
Well, sometimes she also is complaining that when I'm home, I'm spending so much time working for the band and rehearsing and doing all the things that I do. Like lately, I've been working on the van, putting more insulation in the van since it's a summer tour. The van's black, so it's going to be a.
Ooh,
You bought a black. You bought a black Sprinter.
Yeah, I did like kind of a low budget upgrade to the van. So I bought the van; it was just an empty shell,
Right.
So that's why I'm talking about going homeless, is because I bought windows for it and seats.
But you
and
can
I
live in
built
that thing.
This bunk bed in it, and then I paid someone to put insulation and paneling in it, but they didn't. They didn't do a great job with insulation. It was kind of low budget. So I took all the paneling off myself and put in way heavier insulation. It's not quite done, but that's one of my projects.
So, but you can live in that though if things go south, right? That's the plan B.
I shouldn't say it in public, but yeah, that's the idea, is that if I lose the house, at least we have 4 beds in a vehicle. We could just go pull up to a parking to a RV site. The van doesn't have like a fridge or a bathroom or anything though, but it does have 4 beds.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, a little bit of elbow grease and a can-do attitude.
But I imagine over the years, touring has gotten a little bit easier with connecting with your family, with like FaceTime and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's things we do that we get better at, but then you just never know. What like the kids' emotional needs are, or what other things could happen where it's hard to be away. And
now when
it's hard to say. Like I can't point at myself and say, yeah, I'm successful and this is how it is, because who knows? Like maybe my kids will be really upset, and when they get older, they'll blame me for everything that goes wrong in their lives. Be like, yeah, if you
they're
were
gonna
just
do
home
that
more often,
anyways. They're your kids.
Yeah,
Don't worry.
when it turned into who knows.
And they're going to do that no matter what. That's what you do with your parents. You blame them for all the things that are wrong in your life.
Right.
The fact that you're on tour sometimes means, listen, you can blame, like when I wasn't there, then, if I had been there, you wouldn't blame me for your problems anyway. So it's better I wasn't there. Don't worry about it, all right? It'll take care of itself.
In all honesty, too, it means they have better stories for the therapists, and then they can name drop as well.
Yes.
Right.
Nice.
Now, when did
You're
you...
assuming I could afford a therapist. Well, maybe they can later, but
When did you meet your wife? Where in this process of being like a punk rock kid to a family man, where did you meet your wife in this timeline?
well, it's funny that you mentioned The Getaway, because that record I wrote when I was living with her. And in fact, we got the mastering for that record while we were on our honeymoon, because I remember taking a couple hours and just listening to the music over and over again so that I could approve mastering on that record was called Insider. And
A great
so
record, by
I
the way.
met her, I guess that was 98. We came through Boise, Idaho on a tour with Guttermouth, and her friend was chasing our bass player. And so my wife was pretty shy and didn't talk too much, but she had her own place. And so her friends were trying to convince her to, invite the band over. And so I had to, have the serious discussion, because I was kind of like the dad of the band, and she was kind of like the mom of her friends, of like, the adults had to get together. And so I said, so you really want a punk rock band to come and stay at your house? And she goes, well, are you guys going to trash the place? And I said, no, we're respectful, but it's still,
We live in a
it's
van.
still
We
a lot of
stink.
work, and and so we ended up going over to her place, and she whipped out all the photo albums and showed me all the pictures of her when she was growing up, and we talked for hours, like maybe all night, I think, pretty much, and just the impression I got, like after when I left, I was kind of like, that's the kind of person that I want to marry someday, and so I just kept in touch with her and pursued it, and eventually we did. And we lived in California for about 10 years, and then eventually moved back to Boise because of all the touring. There's a lower cost of living, but also especially because her family's all here, so she has the support of having that infrastructure around because I'm gone.
You almost
know,
proved me
and
so
so-
right.
Her folks can help her out, or brothers and sisters, and
You almost, because I was talking with Travis off air before the episode, and I said, I bet, because I realized you lived in Mountain Time. We were coordinating this episode, and I heard from the other podcast you lived in Boise, and I was like, I wonder if he lives there because it's just cheaper to live there than L.A. being in a punk rock band and all that stuff. And Travis is like, no, I bet not.
Okay,
Well,
whatever.
it was part of it, because in the 10 years that we lived in Los Angeles, we would visit her folks on a regular basis. And one of my favorite pastimes was getting the real estate magazines. And at the time, this was before the market crash. At the time in Los Angeles, the cheapest, crummiest place you could imagine was $500,000.
Right.
Like just a shack
Yeah.
was $500,000. And then I'd go to Boise and be like, I could have a house here for $50,000.
That's still
And-
true, isn't
and-
it? I mean,
Yeah, well, prices have gone up in Boise since then, but still, just the idea of just thinking like I could actually own property. Where in California, especially being, even as a sound engineer, it's a very competitive industry, and it's not super high paying, because even though you might make good money while you're on tour, there could be months where you're not on tour, where you're looking for work.
right.
It all
okay.
depends on the calendar, the schedules, and how thick your network is. But the idea of being in Boise and having lower overhead meant that I didn't have to work as much. I didn't have to stress about things as much, and that was very appealing.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Idaho, man.
I figured I figured he met a girl in Idaho and her family was from there. That was my guess.
That was your guess, and that's
Nailed
why
it.
I'm upset. That's how the story ended, because you're fucking right. God damn it!
Oh, I'm so easy to read. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we don't see Boise as the hotbed for pop punk or punk rock music at all. So there had to have been a reason you went there.
Yeah. It's actually pretty nice. It's the vibe, especially kind of downtown Boise, is kind of more similar to Portland and Seattle than it is to Salt Lake and Reno, in my opinion. It's north of Reno and Salt Lake,
Yeah.
but it kind of feels to me more like how Portland feels. Like there's, even though it is kind of a rural community on the outskirts, the actual Boise area is, they're really into college, the Boise State, and they're and they're pretty hip, and they want to be weird like Portland. So I enjoy it. I work here occasionally. I recently just did a Treefort Music Festival where I was doing sound for maybe like 20 bands or so rolled through in a period of a few days in the venue I was working at. And it really was amazing, like great music and great people. And so I still feel a little weird when people ask where I'm from and I say Boise. I don't feel like I'm from here, but
Right.
Oh,
It's
so
just
you
where I
so
live,
you started answering. You're from Boise now.
well, not from Boise. Well, just for example, last week, the last couple of weeks, I've been in New York at the auto show working for Lexus and Toyota. And, so people like, just making small talk, they'd be like, oh, where are you out of? And I still kind of feel like I have to say, well, I'm out of Boise, but I'm really from Los Angeles, because there's still kind of that thing like that. I just live on a potato farm.
Right. Yeah. Boise doesn't roll off the tongue and the imagination as easy as I'm from L.A. I mean,
Yeah.
That's I get that.
But-
It's tough.
As far as professionalism, like people assume if you're from a major city that you're good at what you do.
Right.
Whereas if you're from a rural area, there can be a bit of a lower expectation as far as your technical prowess.
Oh, good. That's interesting you say that, because I never would have thought about that. But now that you say that, it instantly makes sense to me. 'Cause, yeah.
Yeah. But it really, it isn't totally. In some ways, it can be accurate that the production here lags a little bit behind that of bigger markets, just in terms of the quality of gear that they can afford to get, because
Right.
they don't have the level of the sheer numbers that you do in Los Angeles or New York or Las Vegas. But as far as technicians, there's a lot of people who've moved from other areas and live here and are highly skilled, because it really is a desirable place to live. Although people who live here pretty much would like if I don't say that, 'cause
They don't
their
want to know
favorite
about
thing
the
to
best
complain
kept
about
secret.
is how much it's growing here.
They want to keep their little private small community secret, so no one comes in and invades it. all the outsiders come move in
Yeah.
and ruin what they have. Yeah, well,
Oh,
too
yeah.
bad. It's out there now.
I mean,
Yeah, I just got a haircut today, and that was the discussion at the barbershop, was just guys complaining about traffic and, you know, how it's growing and all the houses they're building. And yeah, that's part of it's pretty rough.
yeah, it's been years, a lot of years. But I played in Boise one time.
So did I, one day.
I don't remember what the venue is called or anything like that.
Me
but
either.
yeah, but I remember liking it. I mean, I remember liking the downtown area.
I'm trying to think if I remember anything about Idaho at all when we played there. I know we went through there once on tour, and that was it. I can't remember a single thing about it
Yeah,
other than we played there. I mean,
So
literally.
that's a rousing review for the town of Boise.
I'm sure I remember all the places I hate, and I don't remember that, so I'm sure I didn't hate it. All right, that's all I can say for
didn't
certain.
hate-
That was again.
That's a glowing review. I didn't hate it.
Right.
I didn't hate it.
Welcome to Boise. At best, you're gonna not
You know-
remember this.
I wonder how the new album's going to do, Escalating Quickly in the reviews. But I'm hoping we get reviews like that. I didn't hate it.
All right, guys, we're gonna put a hard stop to the interview right here. Hopefully, it leaves you in some kind of suspense. I don't really know. We'll think about it. Hopefully, it gives you. Again, if you have any questions, comments, things you want to talk about, maybe if you have any questions for Dennis, I can email it to him. We can respond before next week's episode. We can, any thoughts you might have. So let us know. 747 banging.
Yep.
That's what you would say the real phone number, Travis.
I don't want to.
God damn it.
747-226-4464.
Just go ahead, call in or text us or whatever. Leave us a message. If you have any questions for Dennis, let us know. I'll give them to Dennis, and we'll get back to you with an answer by next week. Hopefully.
Maybe.
He didn't sign up for that, but you know what? Too bad. He has now.
This has now become an AMA for him.
It's now an AMA.
All right.
And we'll play the second half of the interview next week as well. So thank you guys for listening this week, and we'll see you guys all next Thursday.
See you next Thursday.